Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Jessica Abernathy, and with me today is Tricia Montgomery, and you are listening to Pets Are Family.
Welcome back to the Pets Are Family podcast. Steve Kaufman, gosh, what an honor it is to have you with us today. You're a bit of an idol for me. I have to tell you that. Not an idol, but I've had you on a pedestal for quite some time, and especially in the animal welfare space. Welcome to Pets Are Family.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that you have this podcast and that are out there really helping to keep promoting and using that phrase, pets are family.
That's true. So when you think about Pets Are Family, Steve, what does that mean to you coming from your expertise and your experience, which we'll get to in a minute?
Well, what it really means to me is that it's a part of your family that there is decision making going on that includes the pet all the time. So when you're making family planning decisions, the pet's automatically included. It's just the default. And we are seeing that generationally, every generation under us, more and more brings that pet into the family and makes life-changing decisions based on with the pet as part of that decision-making process.
I love that you said that because that's really what I was going to ask next. You've been involved in animal welfare for about 25 years, although I think you're only 35, so you must have started when you were 10, Steve. But you must have seen, like Jessica and myself, what you've seen this evolve and changes. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen over the years?
Yes, I have. And it's been about 35. I started in 1990. I was a junior in college, adopted my first dog. And really, when you talk about those changes, that's one of the most impactful. From 99 to about 98, there was no internet at home. It was just really getting developed on the corporate level. So it's not really until 2000 going forward, Pet Finder comes out in 99.
Yeah.
We start sharing best practices and we're able to start moving animals around a little more efficiently, that you start seeing some real changes. So I think, throughout my career and what I've been watching, that change from the 90s to the 2000s, as well as Katrina, those are two things that really launched our industry into just a whole nother stratosphere than what it originally started with.
Yeah. Hurricane Katrina, that's going back to what, 2005? Is that right? Yeah, because I remember I was with the Chicago Veterinary Medical Association at the time. And we actually, with Steve Dale, we did the bark around the world and really created that, uh, raised money for Louisiana SPCA and so many others, and it was just absolutely incredible. And I went down to New Orleans with as part of the American Veterinary Medical Association. That was just crazy. Do you remember that, Steve, being part of that?
It was, yeah, and we
Wow.
were a part of a pipeline as well as animals were starting to get evacuated out. But,
Mm.
between that combination of early 2000s and we're learning the internet and email and how to start communicating more broadly, and then Katrina happening and the launch of just hundreds and hundreds more rescue groups than there originally were. In the early 90s, it was really just breed specific, Cocker Spaniel
Yeah.
rescue, Golden Retriever rescue, Beagle rescue, but that's when really all breed rescue really exploded. So between those two things, you really saw a change in the dynamic and also the public perception of how they viewed shelter animals and just pets as part of the family. That really
Yeah.
started solidifying that phrase.
Yeah, I find it fascinating now when you look at HABRI, Human Animal Bond Research Initiative, and the work that's been done there. The recognition of the veterinary profession, the pet industry, all looking at animal welfare and going, we need to take a look at this. What has really brought on that change, in your opinion, Steve? In the last, I've seen a significant change in the last 2 3 years. What's brought that on?
Well, I think that, we're so lucky to have groups like HABRI and others around that are doing these studies because they're bringing the science to things we've known anecdotally in the industry for so long. And as
Yeah.
pet owners and as people that have been around pets and work with them on a daily basis and see that human animal bond and the human animal interactions that occur, we
Mm.
knew, a lot of these behaviors that pets are going to lower your blood pressure. They're going to help seniors get out of bed and take a walk and get that blood circulating, all those things. And now that those groups have really started putting peer-reviewed science behind it, we've now got a little more clout behind us to make the changes you're talking about and to really go to policymakers with that science and really help advance what we're trying to promote, which is, again, that idea that not just that pets are part of the family, but that the human-animal bond is that strong that it can affect the family and the family dynamic.
Steve, can you comment on the amount of money, and I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot here, the amount of money that is saved by insurance companies every year because of the benefits that pets give to us? Can you comment on that?
Well, my comment I can make is that I'm doing some deep research on that right now. I don't have the exact figures, but I do know, and that goes back to that idea of putting together very accurate numbers so that we do promote ourselves in a very responsible way. But it's there. And there are very tangible figures that we can put behind public policy decisions that our city councils and our government are making that have to do with our lives with animals. And having that science behind us is really going to help us advance those causes.
I love
That's
that.
kind of cool.
And Steve, it is. Jessica and I want to know, you're writing a book right now. Isn't that right, Steve?
I am, yes, almost done.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, so really it's sort of what we've been talking about now. My career from each of those decades and looking over the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, there's been so much change during that time that I felt like it was really important to write about it because we do have, I sort of nicknamed it industry amnesia. We sort of forget things that happen over the years if we don't write it down. And some of it's really important because it sets the precedent for why we're doing what we're doing today. And so, I really felt that not only of the changes that were being made, but in my career in particular, I got to see some very unique things in that I went from direct animal care for about 25 years into the granting world where I was giving money and product away and doing humanitarian and animal aid. So you've got nonprofit work. I was doing government work, municipality work, and then the granting side. So I've got all these different angles, and I've worked with animal control agencies and government agencies and can speak all these sort of different languages within the industry. And I thought I wanted to put all that out there and really talk about it a little more to improve that dialogue, because some of that dialogue is still in need of some work, and we progress is always going forward. And I really want to try to help improve that next 10 years and what that next 10 years is going to look like.
I think in terms of some of the reporting, not that it is archaic, but it's a bit, I don't think the numbers and the data really speaks to really what is going on within the industry. I saw recently that now I believe it is Shelter Love that's going to start reporting data from National Animal Control Association. I think I just saw that, which is really, that's absolutely amazing and incredible. And I think it's going to be so beneficial to look at the numbers from NACA and then look at all of the other organizational numbers too. What, if you look at your decades of experience in animal welfare and everything that you've done, if you were starting a shelter or rescue from scratch today, what would you do differently than you would have done 10, 20, or 30 years ago?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. That, I would build classrooms, not kennels. I really do feel that, we need kennels and shelters are there for those very trying times when a pet does need to be separated from its family member. But we've created more of a disposable system right now. And we've really, in the last 10 to 15 years, started focusing on just adoptions and outcomes within the shelter walls and not really the broader human-animal interactions that we are the gatekeepers of. Our industry is there to make sure that the community has very positive human-animal interactions and that those interactions help you learn empathy and learn respect for other non-human mammals that are out there, non-human animals that are out there. And we really need to start having career paths to get more kids and more generations interested in being a groomer, being a veterinary technician. There's different aspects of our field that can act as multipliers. And as we move people into the field, they go out into the community and then they multiply those positive human-animal interactions, where we've really focused now on singularly saving the animals in front of us in the shelter. And that's a design that I think has got to go forward as you talk about this new shelter of the future. That's where I see it is. It's not really just pet acquisition being the main thing that we are here for. Got to really broaden that into a more of a human-animal interaction, human-animal bond solicitation, so that we can increase the size, and again, that multiplier, really create those positive interactions so that we are not creating negative interactions. And I fear sometimes that as we move forward in a very unregulated space that we're in, we're causing some negative human-animal interactions as well. And because of the internet and all the wonderful things the internet has brought us, it's also amplified some of the negative things going on out there. And when you start looking at the business of running an animal shelter, our market share is dropping. And so we really need to start looking at, again, full circle to your question, when we look at this shelter in the future, how are we interacting with the community and how are we making decisions based on the community needs? I like to say, that there's that phrase, all politics are local. All animal sheltering is local in my mind as well, too. The solutions are local. There are a few national solutions, but really your community is going to help you solve your community's problems.
Yeah, how do you prevent, sorry, Tricia, I'm just going to jump in really quick.
Go ahead.
But I get the fact that we need to have more people working in the shelters and more people helping and all that stuff. But how do you prevent the burnout? That's why I think there's so many people that don't step up, because the burnout kills them. And the burnout's real. A lot of people can't deal with the euthanasia. It hurts them too much. The ones that are there, they're such animal lovers, but it just, after they watch hundreds and hundreds of animals be euthanized because nobody's taking them home, it hurts their souls, and they have to get away because it's mentally damaging them at the same time. How do you compensate those issues to bring more people in?
Well, very glad you brought that up as well, because that is, to go back to the book, another topic that I talk about extensively is longevity in the industry. And how do we create that longevity for all the reasons you brought up? Compassion fatigue is what you're describing. And one of the things, after being in the industry for a while, I can walk into a shelter and there's a grading system, and I can sort of look and go, 4, 2, 5. Like, I've gotten to a point where I can see compassion fatigue in people's expressions and their comments and the way that they frame a certain animal and the description of that animal. And so building that longevity, both on the frontline side and on the leadership side, is going to be a challenge and something we really have to look at going forward. And so to go toward your question, I really feel like there's conversations that have sort of gotten lost about sort of the ethics and the values behind why we're here and what we're doing, and really getting the staff involved in those conversations. And the reason I say it was lost is because as we grew louder and louder to commit these buildings, these animal shelters, to just saving the animals in them, that's been the topic of conversation very operationally. How are we saving the animals that are coming into these buildings? Where we're losing the broader question of how do we keep the community from giving up their pets? How do we step back to that cloud view and start talking about this as a retention problem as opposed to an acquisition problem? It's not that we're not adopting enough animals. It's that we're not keeping enough animals in the home. And it's not just a purely operational that they need food or they need vaccinations. They need the bond and the connection, and to understand the value of having that pet in the home and what that does when you have kids in the home and you're raising a pet, what it does with seniors, what it does for loneliness. All, again, back to that science we have. We need to distill that science into really talkable points to our staff so that they can start to see the value intrinsically of what they're doing for other humans, not just for the animals. And that's where we're in a little bit of a bind too, because historically our industry has been hiring people that don't really like people that much. That's why they go into the industry, because they say, well, I don't really like to work with people, so I'm going to go work in an animal shelter. Yeah. We keep saying over and over, we are in the people business. We are not in the animal business. And so, yes, we do need some technical skills in the back, with vet techs and veterinarians. But really, when you're in the front line of animal work, you're dealing with humans. The dog is not adopting itself. The dog is not donating to your shelter. It is not buying its own dog food. These are all things humans have to do. And so as we start looking at how we're hiring and how we're training, and we're talking about these values and these ethics that I bring up, we have to bring in there the fact that if you're not really willing to recognize you are in the human industry and you are here as a humanitarian, not just the humane movement, you're more a humanitarian, if you will, then you are not getting the full picture of what's going on. And full circle back to Katrina, that's really, to me, my proving grounds. When we saw that there were people willing to die because they could not take their pet with them, and it was almost inevitable, a class 5 was going to hit, that you were not going to make it, that shows that that bond was inseparable, unbreakable. And so if we can harness that, and we can do that with our staff and with the public, as we're training these new employees, as we're looking for the new people to come into our industry, are we looking at people that were in the service industry, waiters and waitresses and hosts and hostesses, and people that were really not shy to talk to strangers? You know, I used to tell my staff, I can teach anyone to scoop a poop and clean a kennel. I can teach anyone to find a vein and draw blood. What I can't teach you is to walk up to a total stranger and start talking to him and going, I see you're looking at Fido. Let me tell you everything about Fido. It's a great dog. And just start talking to him. And that's what, you know, we need more in our industry. And I really think that the classrooms over kennels and really building that human side of our industry is what's going to be the next level to get us over that hump and to really start recognizing that's what's going to keep the pets in the homes. And that's what's going to lower the intake, which in turn will lower the euthanasia. It is all connected. And I get it that we're not going to solve poverty. I mean, that's sort of what I'm describing. And it's a big bear of a chore. But we need to put ourselves in part of that solution. And the animal welfare industry has been outside of that solution saying, well, we're animals, so we're not part of that conversation at the food bank. Well, yes, we are, because most people are deciding which food bank do I go to, a dog food bank or my food bank. And a lot of people will feed the pet first. And so, again, we need to start recognizing this is one industry. And I love the term One Health when we talk about this, because One Health to me implies that my pet is healthy as well. And I give long answers to short questions, so I'll just apologize.
It's okay. You answered. You thoroughly answered the question. So you didn't miss any bit of that, answer. So that it works for me.
Okay. You answered 5 questions in one. So I have to say, at Gulf Coast Humane Society, there is a program called, you were talking about, the benefits and that it can, the lives that you can really save. They have a Silver Paws program. And so anybody over the age of 65 gets to adopt for free, and their veterinary care is free for life. We also pair with the Harry Chapin Food Bank. And so we're making sure there are no empty bowls, and we're providing probably 5,000 to 10,000 pounds of food per month to Harry Chapin Food Bank, which really goes out to so many other different organizations and provides for Meals on Wheels, because it starts with the community, Steve. It does start with the community, and you have to be able, that fine line to balance of being able to make sure that people, once they get a pet, they can retain that pet. And that retention is so important for everyday pet parents who are listening right now to this podcast. And first of all, we love you, Red Coral Universe, and just so grateful to be part of your platform. But how can the everyday pet parent have a meaningful impact in animal welfare?
Well, the short answers are always volunteer and donate, right? So donate your time, donate your finances or any resources like that are necessary. But really, I also think that it's amplifying the message. We've unfortunately social media. I've gotten off of most of my social media platforms because I sort of watched that behavior go sour a little bit. And negativity attracts negativity, and positivity attracts positivity. Unfortunately, there was that old saying that, good news goes to 5 people and bad news goes to 7. Well, bad news goes to 7 million people now. As soon as you hit enter, it's out there. And so, I really encourage people that are pet owners, even if you didn't get your pet from a shelter. And I think that's something that even on our side in the industry, we need to really wrap our heads around is it's all pet owners, not just people that have adopted. We really need everyone that recognizes the value of having a pet in their life to really amplify that on every level of their life. When you have pets at work, and those days where once a week or whenever they let you bring your pets at work, that you are bringing your pet in as an ambassador of what it is like to be able to show how much better your life is because the pet is in it, and what that positivity is doing to make you a better employee. And because your attitude is better in the morning, that you are more productive that way. Um, the same thing with kids that are growing up with pets. We know for a fact that they grow up with more empathy, less behavior problems, less reasons to join gangs or to go out and commit crimes. And so we see a lot of these programs, sort of that midnight basketball idea, right? All these government programs or all these community programs to try to solve that. When in my mind, a pet can do a lot of that work for us. Like having the
Right.
pet in the family is really a driver of that. And so back to your question of how does the community help? How do we, for lack of a better term, end petlessness? Let's get everybody a pet. Let's make sure that we have got the opportunity, at least, for people to understand that value and to bring that joy into their life, not just because the cat purrs on your lap or because you like to play fetch or take long walks, but all the other things that the pet really brings into your life that are these emotional changes that really having that animal is driving you. And I don't think you know it until you start to, well, definitely after you're a repeat pet owner, but after a few weeks and months, we know the bond happens instantly, right? You're bonded really within minutes and with hours. But when you talk to a new pet owner, when you're following up, like I've done with thousands of adoptions, the dialogue changes from a week to a month. I mean, it really changes to, I mean, they've got it in a full tuxedo a month later, right? And it's got a heated dog bowl and it is sleeping on the bed with the chalice next to it. I mean, they've really taken this in as part of their family. And it's just like when we have a baby. I've had kids, and we used to post pictures on social media and everything. That's what a pet does for your life, and it is just as strong for a lot of people. And so we need to continue to promote these positive interactions so that in a time right now, of course, where tensions are high just all over in every industry, and the value of what we're doing in this pet industry needs to really be multiplied considerably. And that's why I'm really excited about this talk about what does a shelter look like in the future, and how are we going to break
Yeah.
away from this. When we talk about open admission and no kill and all these dialogues, it's very internal and in the weeds. Um,
Hmm.
but John and Jane Doe, I like to use that phrase a lot. They want a pet in their life. They want to show their kids the value of training a dog and teaching it to go outside and being slow with the cat and letting it approach you. Those are the conversations we want these families to have, and we want to be the drivers of those. And I think the drivers now, unfortunately, because we're under such pressure from the intake coming in, are really guilt-driven drivers, right? And those only work for a little amount. Like, well, they're going to die if you don't do X,
Yeah,
and
that's not
people don't
working
want that
anymore.
guilt. People remember how you make them feel, and so when you
Exactly.
make them feel bad, that's not a thing I want to do with my family. I want my family to feel good around pets. So we have to
Agree.
change that dialogue and change how we're acting in the industry so that we're presenting ourselves in a much more positive light.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have a comment though. One thing that I find through working in animal welfare is I believe that it's harder on animal welfare workers because they're saving lives, but the pet that they want to spend the most time with, they don't get to take it. They have to leave it at home to care for others, and I always find that interesting because there is always a guilt on animal welfare workers because of the guilt of leaving their pet at home, of leaving it behind, and that guilt. Um, I want to ask you something and I want you to think about if you look at everything that's going on right now, everything that you're talking about, what gives you the most hope? I love the word hope. What what gives you the most hope right now for moving forward into and creating like a I don't know a meaningful impact in animal welfare?
What gives me the most hope? I think that we're starting to have this dialogue more often. That there was a decade driver there where all of the dialogue internal was very operationally focused, which means that
Mm,
we're in an echo chamber. When we're talking about operationally focused things within a shelter and improving how we do things in a shelter, we've excluded the community because we're trying to solve for internally ourselves. And I think we're starting to break through, and you're starting to see the shelter industry starting to look outward to the community. Remember, we used to tell communities what they needed, right? You need to vaccinate, you need to spay neuter, you need to do this and that. And we're seeing more as we start bringing social work into our industry, going into the communities and going, what do you want? What do you need? And you find out when you ask communities what they want and need, it's the same in every community. They want safe streets. They want animals without communicable diseases. They want, they want a lot of people want a just add water dog. They don't want a project animal all the time. There are those of us that will take the project animals, but in general, I'm glad to see that the industry is starting to look at the community and hear their voice and then build their programming around that. Going back to all politics are local, really building that community structure. And what we're going to see, I think, going into the next couple of years is, unfortunately, due to financial constraints and a lot of other things we can talk about as we continue with the show, some of these groups not being able to financially sustain. And there's going to be a lot of mergers and a lot of sort of blending of missions, and that's starting to happen already. And I'm sort of happy to see it because we have such a fragmented industry that we don't have a consistent voice. And so it's really confusing to the public on policy and the reasons behind the why we do what we do, because different agencies have a different why. And it's not really the same. If you look at, police, fire, hospital, other social service providers, there's generally, we know what goes on in a hospital. And we know from hospital to hospital that it's going to operate in somewhat the same manner. Whereas with shelters and rescue groups, and after working with rescue groups for so long on the national level, and working with, I've visited over 1,100 shelters so far in my career. And what I'm convinced of is the public doesn't know the smallest from the largest, right? Any big box with animals in it is either a humane society or an SPCA, depending on if you're East Coast or West Coast. And so if you've got a great website, if you're Bob's Rescue and you've got a great website, but you're only like 6 months old, you just started, I mean, the news might call you and put you on TV because they're like, well, look, we found a website. They must know what they're talking about. And they have,
right. And
now your opinion just became public opinion for all of animal welfare. And the smallest is speaking for the largest. And we see that a lot. And it's unfortunate because we're so fragmented. And I think these mergers that we're going to see going forward are going to be very beneficial to bringing the public on board and getting more and more cheerleaders because they're going to understand us. And we're very confused right now because, I mean, to be honest, we haven't even solved internal definitions. We still internally argue about a lot of the words we use: manageable, treatable, rehabilitatable, adoptable. We haven't solved it for ourselves. And so it makes it very difficult to explain to John and Jane.
How can we solve it for others? We can't solve it for others if we don't even know what we're talking about. And I think that is an issue of your larger national organizations. Of imagine, and Jessica and I talk about this all the time, is if we all rowed together, if we were all rowing in the same direction, what a beautiful world it would be. And my hope is
we just need to make Tricia president. That's what I always say. Just make Tricia. If I made Tricia president, this world would just be like, it'd be perfect.
It would be built on rock, paper, scissors, duct tape, and slobber. That's what I think it would be.
Yeah.
Yes,
but it would be yes. I always say that it would be perfect. Give her 2 months, and this place everything would be just figured out.
You and me, Steve.
Yeah,
and Jessica, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. Steve, if you're kind of wrapping up here a little bit, if you look at the next generation of animal welfare, like people listening, then our next generation of leaders, what do you want them to know? What is a takeaway for them, Steve, from your wisdom bank?
The best takeaway right now, I would say, is listen to your community. Get outside your comfort zone. Start joining other boards and other community areas of the community where there is also trouble, and there might be trouble with animals related. The reason I bring this up is housing is a big issue, right? So we know pet inclusive housing is a huge issue for people keeping their pets in the home. And when I hear this, and I hear a lot of people get very passionate about it, I asked either the leadership or the board that I'm with, so are you on the local real estate board? Are you going to meetings? Are you talking to other realtors that own properties and going and listening to their concerns? And very few are. Very few are stepping into that zone like, well, why would I be on that board? I don't own real estate. It's like, yeah, but you are a stakeholder. And you could be the one coming every meeting with all that data that shows that pet owners actually have longer stay rates in rentals and less damage done to rentals, and their rent is always due on time and they pay it on time. Like, they're just better renters than non-pet owners. But we need to be in those meetings and on those boards in those neighborhoods so that you have a voice in there. And we need to do that in a lot of different industries so that we are, again, putting ourselves out there, that we are not a separate industry that's a separate, we are part of the human industry. We are not just the animal industry that's off to the side and, hey, when disaster strikes, all the humans, people are going to go over here and solve for it. And then later we'll solve for this, because we know that humans are going to die trying to save their pets. But we need to professionalize our industry. And I guess that would be the second thing I would put forward, Tricia, to your comment, is how do we continue to professionalize the image of these agencies so that we are respected enough to sit at those tables, and that we are brought and invited in so that we are speaking the language of government and not speaking the language of shelter, and talking about live release rates and intake diversion. These are all very shelter-centric dialogues that you lose people really quickly.
You do.
So I don't talk about, intake diversion anymore. I talk about preserving families. Because when you talk about preserving a family, it is creating a diversion of intake for a shelter, but politicians can get behind, preserving families. They can't get behind intake diversion because it means nothing to them. So how do we change our dialogue to really reflect a community value rather than internal sheltering values?
Preach it, brother. Preach it. You just gave a sermon on animal welfare, man. If nobody understood anything, they do now.
I hope so.
They do. I love that word, preserving families. That's so, gosh darn it. If you could put that into a bottle. Steve, how can we help you spread your message? You are a force to be reckoned with. This has been such an enlightening, honestly, I love this conversation. How can we push it forward? What can you do to push it forward? What can we do? What can you do to help get it forward?
Well, when is your book due out? Because I'd love to put your book on our website so that way we can promote it there.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, so I have a due at the end of the year that I'll have it completed. Still has to go through editing and legal. I have a lot of people that have to put eyes on
legal.
A lot of eyes that need to be on it before I can put it out there. But I really think, I appreciate you having me on and just pushing this same type of dialogue and bringing other guests on. This is why I started this company as well, is that I really do truly believe in this future of mergers and sort of scaling rescue groups to be more professional and shelter-like. And I really recognize the difficulty, I should say, of each city trying to scale themselves internally, because there's so much strife between these agencies that you need that outside voice to come in and be that moderator and to come in. And I really feel like that's what I'm trying to do now, is take this experience from nonprofit to municipal to government to granting, all these languages that I speak, open admission, no kill. How do I bring these groups together and start them to recognize that they can do better by scaling? And if they come together, and we don't need 5 executive directors, we have 1. We don't need 5 development directors, we have 1. We are buying product at bulk rate. We are buying pharmaceuticals, our vet care at bulk rate. Absolutely. I'm trying to put together a lot of this data so I can go into cities and really start to help them solve for their city and elevate within their own communities. And I went around and visited 32 different statewide coalitions in my travels when I was on the corporate side. And so there are coalitions of groups that are anxious to listen to people like me come in and speak, but it's hard internally for them to drive that change. So I'm hoping that I can start growing my company and working on that and really start to help others expand those mergers and expand their footprint in the city so they can start doing good for the human-animal bond, not just pet acquisition and pet relinquishment.
I love that. Steve, guess what we're doing? We're going to do a thing called rapid fire. So I'm going to throw you out some questions and you just get to answer them. And they're very short questions. You ready?
All right, short. I'll try. Okay.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Early mornings, late nights?
Early mornings.
Most overused phrase in animal welfare?
Game changer.
Ooh, I love it.
Hate that phrase.
What one word to describe today's shelter world?
Struggling.
Coffee or caffeine free?
Coffee.
Big city shelter or rural?
Rural.
Okay. One thing every shelter needs less of.
Kennels, bars.
Last question. What's one small thing every one of our listeners can do this week to help pets?
Promote positivity with your pet. Introduce your pet to somebody that doesn't have a pet. Get out there and really just, show the joy of the human-animal bond.
Steve, I love that. Steve, how can people find you?
Well, my LinkedIn page is the last social media that I've stayed on. So you're welcome to find me there. I'm working on a website. I've been resistant to that, but I will have one launched by next year because of the book.
Right.
But feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I will share this podcast and have my contact information there as well. As you could probably tell, I can talk about this stuff for hours and days. So if you reach out, be prepared that we will talk, and we will talk and talk.
I love that. Jessica, thoughts? Anything in wrap up?
No, just, if you ever need a good sermon and get good messagings, see Steve. This is awesome. I think we'll have you back on when your book comes out.
Oh, I would
love
appreciate that
that.
so much. Thank you for having me today.
Oh,
You're
Steve,
welcome.
it is our honor to have you. And remember, pets are family.
Yes.
That's our family.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to Pets Are Family. You can find us on all the channels now. Yes, all of the channels now. So make sure you share us with your friends, your families, and your coworkers, and anybody that has a pet. Make sure you like us, give us your feedback, tell us if anything that you want us to talk about, all that fun stuff. You can reach me at jessica@petsourfamily.net or Tricia@petsourfamily.net. Thank you for everything that you guys do, but make sure you like us, subscribe, check us out on YouTube. You can always see what we're up to. And we want to thank all of our sponsors, all of the people that support us. We love every one of you, and we can't thank you enough. And remember, check out Moose's March, moosesmarch.com, MOOSESMARCH.com. Come check us out. Talk to you guys soon. We'll see you next week.